For generations, the LGBTQA community has been degraded. There are various social misconceptions that they endure throughout society. Many people are led to believe the only label one can identify with are gay or lesbian. However, there are many identities that this community carries.
So, as far as like my sexual orientation, well, sort of both my sexual orientation and my gender identity, I feel like the sexual orientation came first because like it was sort of, you know, when you start dipping your toes in the LGBT community, that's sort of one of the first things you touch on is like gay, lesbian, and I was like,
all right,
nope, neither of those. And so you get a little bit further, and I decided that I heard the word pants. Well, there's sort of a sexual spectrum, and then there's a romantic spectrum.
Right.
And so I'm on the asexual spectrum, where I just like, I'm not really super interested in sex or having sex with people. But I do like the idea of romance, but I also don't really have a preference for any gender in terms of romance.
So you're asexual pan-romantic?
Yeah.
Ha!
And then I figured that out, and I was like, okay, cool, I got myself all figured out. Whew. And then I went a little bit further in, and I started figuring out I was trans. I go with, like, trans-masculine, which is, like, it's not quite, like, FTM. That's not quite, like, all the way male. Like, I'm not a trans man, per se.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm kinda...
Yeah.
Kinda. But also kinda not.
First of all, I didn't know really anything until a lot later. So, started kind of in elementary school, and I didn't really like anyone, but I definitely didn't like guys kind of thing. Like, not in like, I hate guys, but like, I wasn't interested in guys and all. And then someone's like, that's really weird and everything. You're supposed to have a crush on guys, because all the girls had a crush on guys. And then so I kind of was just like, oh, guess I gotta do that. And so I did that up until, and I just eventually kind of forgot about everything else and never really said I was straight or anything, but just kind of put it on the back burner of that kind of thing. And then sort of senior year, I saw a girl jog by while I was on the bus, and I was like, and so that's kind of where that went. But as I'm going, like, as I'm learning and getting older and everything, like, all that's still changing and I'm still changing. Like, I've figured out from then till now that it's more specific, that with guys, I like more of a romantic and not a sexual relationship, and then with girls, it's either or, so...
How about you?
I definitely do like the diversity here in Pullman. I was actually not expecting that because I'm from the west side of the state, and in my high school, like the GSA, it was like, oh, you're only straight, you're only gay. It was like, and there was one trans guy there. It was like, it was awful for him, honestly. My school was not. I mean, they were like, okay, you're gay, okay, whatever, and then they get all weird about like everyone else, and he's like, well, they're involved too. Why exclude like everyone else? And then that's just wrong, honestly.
Here at Washington State University, there are several organizations that offer support and are used to help build awareness on LGBTQA challenges.
Well, I got involved with GSA the minute I stepped on this campus for the first time with my Alive group. And through the course of last year, I went from being a general member of the club to being the programming chair, and we do elections in the club. And then after running for programming chair, I decided that I was going to run for chair of the club on a random whim, and somehow here I am. Yeah, I'm actually in the process of attempting to perform at Tabby Cat, and we're trying to put on a drag show here. Tabby Cat is a drag, I don't know if you want to call it a club or an event, but it's a drag social. that happens once a month over at the Moose Lodge in Moscow. Well, they teach you a little bit about their process and kind of etiquette type stuff, and go through some general, this is what you do, this is what you don't do. General acceptance of lesbian and gay people in general it has definitely gotten better, but the rest of our alphabet soup community is forgotten a lot of the time, and if not forgotten, then a lot of the time generally harassed, and like the trans community right now is facing a lot of persecution, particularly trans women of color, and it's become a pretty big problem.
Every year, people of color who identify themselves as transgender are ruthlessly murdered. In addition, they are disregarded by not only society but mainstream media. Earlier this month, the members of Queer People of Color and Allies organized a rally on the WSU campus to raise awareness for queer and trans women of color.
Hello, my name is Paulina Abustan. My preferred pronouns are she, her, and I was inspired to do the rally today because I do identify as queer, Filipina, and I actually have a friend and colleague from UC Santa Barbara, Zoraida Reyes, who was murdered. She's queer, trans, Latina, and she was actually an activist for the immigrants community and also the trans and queer community. So her death really impacted me. She died this summer, so it's just once again hitting close to home. And as well as Jennifer Laud, who was a queer, trans, Filipina woman who was murdered by a U.S. Marine. So I feel like all these issues happening here in the U.S. and also in the world are just hitting close to home. So I wanted to raise awareness about all the queer and trans people of color, especially trans women of color, being murdered.
Well, actually, Paulina reached out to me and asked me to be a part of it. And obviously, you know, I took on my own opinion to be a part of it, but I, of course, identify with the queer community, and I find it important to be embodiment there. We were surrounded by other students, other people coming from different areas around in Pullman, and it was lovely to see so many people around us. I mean, we have so many other people here on campus that could be a part of it, but, you know, of course, being a student first. But I joined because I want to bring awareness. I want to bring awareness to my campus, but I also want to bring awareness to my community.
At the rally, I was helping facilitate. The portion of the program that I did was I led the song called "Which Side Are You On," as well as discuss the statistics of trans women of color, more specifically Black trans women of color who've been murdered within the past year and also just starting 2015. And one thing I noticed today, in comparison to the other rallies that we've had, like the hashtag Coups for Ferguson, the majority of people of color who were at those was significantly higher. At the Coups for Ferguson rally, we had about 200 people attend. And, you know, just out of that alone, there were way more Black faces there, you know, in support of Mike Brown. But, you know, today we have this rally, and I only counted 6 of us. And there were more people who either weren't of color or who were of other backgrounds who were there advocating for us and, you know, still saying, like, all Black lives matter, trans Black lives matter, you know, queer Black lives matter. And yet, you know, my own community didn't even show up. And it's really frustrating because it shows even within our community the discrepancies between what lives matter and what lives don't.
The reason why I came to the rally today was because 2 weeks ago on Tumblr, I found the information upon the death of Jessie Hernandez and how she died. And it really affected me personally because it hit way too close to home. My brother is going to be 17 soon, so, like, it was just a little too close. And today, within the rally, I kind of felt within myself that since I came out to my parents and my family last night, that I would share that with the rest of the community that was at the rally today, and I told them of my experience. I'm one of the lucky ones. Whenever I did tell my parents, my dad said that he thought I was coming out as a Republican. No, Dad, that's not what I was doing. But it was funny that he thought that was the most tragic thing that could possibly happen. And like I said, I am very lucky as an individual because not everyone gets that experience. People get banished from their families. They sometimes get killed, hurt really bad. So I'm really lucky.
I told him how I really appreciated the fact that there's so much community involvement and so much outreach when it comes to these murders, because it's very important that people of color are recognized. And then just to see the support from the police, which is where there's so much marginalization, not only within the city, but within the community, within the university. It's just so wonderful and heartwarming to see that.
We're not these invisible elves that disappear into the night. We are with you. We are working at your convenience stores. We're in your political groups, your religious groups. And the worst part is when you try to pretend that we're not there and try to distance us from everything else, because that's what we learned going around to each of these different centers, is that a lot of people didn't realize that the trans lives that were lost were part of their own community, or the GSORC Center didn't really have much connection to the people who died because, or at least it seemed like, because they weren't the faces they recognized as their own.
These deaths, these murders are not okay. It should not be normalized. Every single month we hear a trans woman of color murdered. This should not be normal, and there should be uproar. There should be rage about this. People should be angry, but it seems like majority of the world doesn't know. So I think today was really to raise that awareness, really to have all these Wazoo students listen and hear these names and start to realize this is not okay, and starting with our own families, starting with our own communities, to start, loving ourselves, loving our family members, because these people could be our family. Like, who's next? Is your friend next? Is your neighbor next? So this should not be happening. So I really appreciate all the folks who helped organize today and everyone in that circle today. There were a lot of personal stories shared, and I really appreciate everyone for bringing more visibility around this.
Somewhere in Des Moines or San Antonio, there's a young gay person who all of a sudden realizes that she or he is gay, knows that if the parents find out, they'll be tossed out of the house. The classmates would taunt the child, and the Anita Bryans and John Briggs are doing their bit on TV, and that child had several options: staying in a closet, suicide, and then one day that child might open a paper and it says homosexual elected in San Francisco, and there are two new options. The option is to go to California, stay in San Antonio and fight. 2 days after I was elected, I got a phone call, and the voice was quite young. It was from Altoona, Pennsylvania, and the person said, "Thanks. And you've got to elect gay people so that that young child and the thousands upon thousands like that child know that there's hope for a better world. There's hope for a better tomorrow. Without hope, not only gays, but those blacks and the Asians and the disabled, the seniors, the us's, without hope, the us's give up. I know that you cannot live on hope alone, but without it, life is not worth living. And you've got to give them hope. Thank you very much.